I was transferred to a regional branch that had been running at a loss for 5 consecutive years. There, I met a stunning branch CEO who worked tirelessly until 2 a.m. every night. She was handling a critical project, a multilateral business deal worth $30 million that would determine the future of the branch. But on the day of the negotiation, the interpreter suddenly canceled at the last minute. At a $30 million deal, the interpreter just disappeared. How is this even possible? As the panicked branch CEO stood there, I quietly opened my mouth. This is exactly what I'd been waiting for. Ms. Hartley, leave the interpreting to me. Effortlessly interpreting between 7 languages, I led the negotiation to a successful conclusion. But behind the scenes, an old friend of mine had already begun orchestrating a conspiracy. Betrayal, redemption, and the relentless pursuit of our dreams. Where will our journey take us? My name is Nate. I work at the headquarters of a major corporation in New York. When I arrived at the office first thing in the morning, I found an envelope on my desk. Inside, bold letters stood out: personnel transfer notice. The content is the reassignment to a regional branch. Officially, it was just a transfer, but anyone could see the real reason I was being demoted. As the heavy atmosphere settled, Seth, my department head, stood in front of me. Nate, are you sure this is what you want? His face showed an unusual hesitation. It was only natural. This transfer was something I had personally requested. Yes, this is fine. We were just in the middle of restructuring, so to be honest, this helps us. But that branch is in serious trouble. It's been running at a loss for 5 years, and there's even talk of a buyout. I'm aware. And I still want to go. Sensing my determination, Seth let out a small sigh. Can I ask why? I hesitated for a moment before I smiled and answered. You'll find out soon enough. There's something I need to do at that branch. Seth said nothing more. And so, I packed up my desk and set off for the regional branch. From the outside, the building looked impressive. But the moment I stepped inside, I could feel the difference in the air. A tense silence loomed over the place like a heavy cloud. I guess 5 years of losses will do this to a place. I grabbed my business cards and went around introducing myself to each department. The first stop was the engineering department. I'm Nate Cansby. Starting today, I'll be working here. A man in his 40s responded. I see. Tough break, transferring here now. No, I came here to learn. Learn, huh? Do you really think we have the luxury for that? He pointed at a mountain of documents stacked on his desk. These are all unfinished work. We're drowning here. The strained atmosphere in the room spoke louder than his words. Next, I headed to the sales department. Their reception was just as cold. Nate, so you got transferred? Yes. I'll be working here starting today. Sounds rough. But honestly, we don't have the capacity to take on extra people right now. I understand the situation is tough. Well, things are pretty tense around here, so you'd better watch what you say. That one remark spoke volumes about how stretched thin the employees were. By the time I finished my introductions, I could feel the weight of exhaustion settling on my shoulders. I returned to my desk, sat down, and glanced around. Everyone was silently staring at their computers, with barely any conversation happening. So this is the reality of this branch. The problem this branch faced was clear. They had developed an innovative energy-saving technology, but the research costs had piled up, leading to 5 consecutive years of financial losses. But I came here to change something. Determined, I took a deep breath. No one knew yet how this challenge would reshape my life. After my first day of introductions, I returned to my small, cheap apartment near the branch. The building was old, but it had everything I needed to get by. Not that I had the luxury to care about that right now. As I finished unpacking and opened my bag to prepare for the next day, I realized something. Wait, where is it? My phone was missing. I was pretty sure I had left it on my desk at work. Damn. I had no idea when someone from the branch might try to contact me. Without my phone, I was helpless. Sighing, I decided to head back to the office. At night, the branch had a completely different kind of silence than during the day. The lights were off, and I made my way to my desk in the dim glow. There it is. Finding my phone right where I had left it, I let out a breath of relief. But just as I picked it up, I sensed something. A faint light was coming from the meeting room in the back of the office. Peering inside, I saw someone still working at their computer. Who would be here at this hour? I quietly opened the door to take a closer look. The moment I saw her profile, I remembered. It was Melissa Hartley, the branch CEO. I hadn't seen her earlier that day, but at the very least, I had made sure to learn the name and face of the person at the top. As I stood there, she finally noticed me. Oh. Our eyes met. For a brief moment, she looked surprised, but then a gentle smile appeared on her face. You must be the one who started today. Yes. I'm Nate Cansby, and I'll be working here from now on. Ms. Hartley slowly walked toward me. The exhaustion was evident on her face. What brings you here at this hour? I left my phone behind, so I came back to get it. I see. Forgetting something on your first day, rough start. She chuckled softly as she spoke. But there was a subtle sadness in that smile. You really picked the worst possible time to be transferred here. What do you mean? She sighed quietly as she returned to her computer. This branch is on the brink of shutting down. There's an ongoing discussion about selling off the business. That's why everyone is on edge. Her voice carried a deep exhaustion. Yet, at the same time, I could sense a strong determination within her. Ms. Hartley's words echoed through the quiet, heavy office. But this doesn't really concern you, does it? You just got here. Yes, of course it concerns me. Now that I'm part of this branch, I have a responsibility too. Her eyes widened slightly at my words. She looked surprised, but a soft smile soon formed on her lips. You're serious, Nate. It's just how I am. A brief silence fell between us. Ms. Hartley lowered her gaze to her computer, then spoke as if deep in thought. Actually, a major company from Germany has approached us with an offer to buy our technology. Germany? Yes. They're interested in our energy-saving technology and want to set up a direct negotiation. The meeting is scheduled to take place soon. Her voice was calm, but there was a sense of resolve behind it. But I have no intention of selling our business. You don't? Ms. Hartley looked straight at me. I want us to remain the provider of this technology. I believe we should refine it ourselves while leveraging large-scale investment. That's my vision. In other words, you're aiming for a partnership agreement? Exactly. Instead of selling our technology outright, we need to be the ones in control. That way, we can protect our innovations while expanding into new markets. But it's not going to be easy. She gave a small shrug and a weary smile. That's why everyone in this branch is so on edge. Yes. Because the future of the branch is at stake. I nodded deeply, feeling the weight of the situation settling over me. I had no idea what was coming next, but one thing was certain: this was going to be a turbulent ride. As I listened to Ms. Hartley, I became even more aware of the immense challenges this branch was facing. It's not just the German company, is it? There are other negotiators as well. That's right. She turned her screen toward me, showing a list of companies. Along with Germany, companies from France, Denmark, Spain, China, and India will also be participating in the negotiations. That many countries. Our technology has gained a lot of attention in the fight against environmental issues, especially in the energy sector. There's strong interest from multiple countries. Her voice carried confidence, but I could also sense the immense pressure she was under. But with this many players involved, the negotiations won't be simple. Each country has its own agenda, and their interests often conflict. Balancing those interests sounds like a major challenge. A brief silence filled the meeting room. But I didn't hesitate. Even so, I want to help. What? Ms. Hartley looked up in surprise. This technology shouldn't be sold off so easily. I agree with your approach. And as a member of this branch, I want to do everything I can to support you. She blinked in surprise, then let out a quiet chuckle. Nate, you really are serious. It's just the way I am. But I appreciate it. Just hearing you say that makes me feel a little lighter. As she spoke, her expression softened slightly, as if some of the weight on her shoulders had lifted. The future of this branch rested on her. But I wasn't going to let her carry it alone. At that moment, I made up my mind. I would help carry the burden that Ms. Hartley was bearing, even if just a little. On the day of the negotiation, the atmosphere in the branch's conference room was tense. Representatives from 6 major corporations across different countries were joining the meeting online. In preparation for this day, Ms. Hartley had been working tirelessly. Today was a make-or-break moment for the future of the branch. But as the meeting time approached, I noticed something was off about Ms. Hartley. She stood at the edge of the room, phone pressed to her ear, her expression growing darker. No response. No matter how many times I call. Ms. Hartley, what's wrong? She looked up, her face filled with urgency. The interpreter we hired isn't answering. It looks like they're not coming. What? Ms. Hartley let out a deep sigh, pressing her fingers against her temple. At a $30 million negotiation, the interpreter disappeared. How is this even possible? The weight of her words made the air in the room even more suffocating. Is there a backup interpreter? We're trying to find one, but expecting someone to just show up last minute and be fluent in all these languages is nearly impossible. Her voice carried both desperation and helplessness. If this negotiation falls apart, we're finished. As I watched her growing panic, I calmly processed the situation. Germany, France, Denmark, Spain, China, and India. There were 6 countries in total. Each one was a key player in this deal. As Ms. Hartley said, we need interpreters who can translate 6 languages without difficulty, even technical terms. But I could feel the corners of my mouth curling up slightly. This is exactly what I'd been waiting for. It wasn't just about necessity. Languages had always been my passion. Over the years, my interest has led me to master multiple languages, especially those used in international business. At this level of discussion, I had full confidence in my ability to handle the interpretation. Ms. Hartley, leave the interpreting to me. Her head snapped up, eyes wide with shock. What? I understand the required languages. If the interpreter isn't coming, I'll take over. But Nate, are you really sure about this? Her expression was a mixture of doubt and concern. I didn't blame her. It was absurd, some newly transferred employees suddenly volunteering to be the interpreter for a massive international negotiation. Interpreting isn't something just anyone can do. I know. But we don't have time. We can't afford to sit here waiting for someone who may never show up. When I said this, Ms. Hartley nodded lightly as if she had realized something. All right. But if you feel like you can't handle it, let me know immediately. Understood. The large monitors in the conference room flickered to life, displaying the faces of the international company representatives one by one. Each of them greeted the group in their respective languages. Ms. Hartley cast me a worried glance. Are you really sure about this? Trust me. The first to speak was the German representative. Good morning, everyone. Shall we begin the meeting? Without hesitation, I smoothly translated. Good morning, everyone. Let's move on to today's agenda. Next, the French representative started speaking. This meeting will hopefully be a productive one. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope today's discussion will be meaningful. Ms. Hartley's eyes widened in surprise. He's really translating. I heard her quiet murmur, but I stayed focused. The meeting was progressing smoothly. Ms. Hartley operated the slides, projecting the proposal onto the screen. Although each company had already received translated documents in advance, all eyes were now fixed on the presentation displayed on their screens. Our proposal today is about the global expansion of products utilizing our new material. Her voice was calm but firm. Specifically, we are seeking capital participation from each country's companies to establish sales networks in their respective markets. The manufacturing will remain in our country to ensure consistent quality. The representatives examined the documents with serious expressions, listening intently. In addition, each country will contribute in specific areas. For example, France will handle design, Denmark will oversee technological validation, and China will be responsible for establishing the mass production framework. Ms. Hartley then moved on to explain the profit distribution. Profit sharing will be determined based on initial investments. Transparency will be our priority to ensure all parties find the terms acceptable. A brief silence fell over the meeting room before representatives began voicing their questions. This was where the real conflicts between countries would start emerging. The German representative raised his hand first. What about control over the project? It would be most efficient if we were the majority shareholders. Ms. Hartley's gaze sharpened slightly. Control will not be concentrated in any single country. This will be structured as an equal partnership. The German representative frowned. But won't that slow down decision-making? Ms. Hartley hesitated for a moment before responding. Key decisions will be made through discussions by a joint committee. This approach ensures that all countries' interests are considered, leading to the best possible outcome. Next, the Danish representative spoke up. What about safety regulations? Under our standards, the current specifications are insufficient. Stricter regulations will be necessary. Ms. Hartley calmly flipped through the documents. We will comply with each country's safety standards flexibly. However, excessive regulations could significantly increase costs. So we aim to set practical standards. The moment she finished speaking, the Chinese representative jumped in. The production facility should be relocated to our country instead of the US. We can dramatically reduce mass production costs that way. Ms. Hartley's expression tightened slightly, but she chose her words carefully. Keeping production in the US allows us to maintain quality control. However, we will rely on China's cooperation in establishing a scalable production system while prioritizing quality. A brief silence followed. Everyone in the room watched closely for the reactions of the international representatives. Then, the Spanish representative spoke. Our priority is securing market share, particularly in Europe, where competition is fierce. Ms. Hartley nodded in acknowledgement. Market competition in each region will be addressed through coordinated sales strategies to maximize overall profitability. We cannot allow any single country to dominate. Finally, the Indian representative spoke. We prioritize pricing. No matter how high the quality, if the cost is too high, the market won't accept it. Cost reduction is essential. Ms. Hartley let out a quiet breath and responded in a composed voice. Cost efficiency is crucial, of course. However, cost-cutting measures must not come at the expense of quality. Striking a balance is key. With that, the round of statements from each country's representatives concluded. The discussion was heating up. Each country was prioritizing its own interests, showing no signs of compromise. Ms. Hartley remained composed, but I could tell she was under immense pressure. This is just the beginning. The real battle starts now. The meeting was about to enter an even more intense phase. Ms. Hartley stayed firm as she continued presenting her proposals. As the discussion progressed, she elaborated on the specific plans for market expansion using the new material. The representatives from each country studied the documents with keen interest. Even through the screen, it was clear that they had a certain level of interest in the proposal. This proposal will allow each country's companies to leverage your strengths and maximize your profits. After a brief silence, the French representative spoke up. An interesting proposal. If this technology is successfully implemented, it would certainly enhance market competitiveness. Several other representatives nodded in agreement. But in the next moment, the German representative spoke in a cold tone. However, a buyout would be far more efficient. We should provide full capital investment and take over all decision-making. That would be the best course of action. The atmosphere in the conference room tensed instantly. Ms. Hartley's expression hardened for a brief moment as she prepared to respond. But I stepped in first. I understand your perspective. However, the goal of this proposal is to establish an equal partnership. The German representative furrowed his brows and stared at me through the screen. An equal partnership? That would only add unnecessary complications. In the short term, it might seem that way. But in the long run, fostering equal cooperation among all partners will maximize the overall market benefits. It's a more sustainable business model. Wouldn't you agree? The German representative fell silent, considering my words. Ms. Hartley gave a small nod and continued her explanation. Next, the Danish representative spoke up. Could you elaborate on the safety regulations? Under our standards, the current specifications are insufficient. Stricter regulations will be necessary. The Chinese representative immediately pushed back. Stricter regulations? That would drive up costs significantly. That's not practical. But we can't afford to neglect safety. Our country has stringent regulatory requirements. I took a moment to organize their concerns before responding calmly. Both perspectives are important. Safety regulations vary from country to country, but by aligning with international standards, we can find a balanced solution that works for all parties. The Danish and Chinese representatives exchanged looks before nodding slightly. The French representative then raised his voice. We will take the lead on design. We have no intention of letting other countries interfere. His assertive statement caused other representatives to frown. That won't work. Each region has different design needs that must be considered. Just as the discussion was about to spiral into chaos again, I intervened. Design is a crucial aspect, but regional preferences must also be taken into account. A joint design team should be formed to incorporate input from each country while maintaining a cohesive brand identity. The representatives gradually started to accept this approach. Then, the German representative, still maintaining a strong stance, spoke again. I've listened to everything so far, but in the end, we should hold 51% of the shares. That way, decisions can be made more efficiently. This statement immediately sparked resistance from the other representatives. That would be unfair. It would undermine the whole point of shared risk and investment. Capital should be distributed evenly. That's the most stable approach. The discussion once again became tense. I took a deep breath and spoke in a calm, steady tone. A decentralized ownership model, where all countries contribute equally, would be the most optimal structure. Let me present some specific figures to illustrate why this model maximizes total profitability while reducing risk. As I displayed the data on the screen, the representatives studied it carefully, and they slowly began to nod in agreement. As the meeting neared its conclusion, none of the countries were willing to completely back down. At that moment, I made a final proposal. I'd like to present a new approach that integrates cultural backgrounds and national values into our strategy. Ms. Hartley looked at me in surprise but quickly nodded. We propose distributing production facilities across multiple countries to reduce transportation costs. Design and safety standards will be managed by an international joint committee for flexible adjustments. Additionally, a revised profit-sharing model will be introduced to optimize overall gains for all parties. A long silence followed. Then, one by one, the representatives nodded in quiet agreement. Ms. Hartley turned to me and gave a small, approving smile. "You did an incredible job, Nate." "Thank you." The negotiation had finally reached an agreement. As the meeting concluded, the tension in the room eased. One by one, the representatives exchanged farewells, confirmed the schedule for the next meeting, and disconnected from the call. Once the room fell silent, Ms. Hartley let out a small sigh. "It's over. I'm just glad it ended well." She turned to me and stared intently, her expression a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "Nate, how were you able to interpret so fluently?" "Well," I hesitated for a moment. Ms. Hartley pressed further. "And it's not just that. You knew intricate details about our company's technology far more than an average employee should know." Her words were sharp, cutting straight to the heart of the matter. "I never intended to hide it." "No one ever asked." "Hide what?" I took a deep breath and finally revealed the truth. "Actually, I developed this technology." Ms. Hartley's eyes widened in shock. "What?" "I was originally an engineer. My friend and I started a company to develop this technology. Back then, we saw the potential of energy-saving innovations and wanted to make them a reality." Memories of those days came flooding back. My friend's name was Shawn. The two of us launched a small startup. He handled financing, while I focused on development. Things were going well. At first. "Then why aren't you still running it?" I let out a bitter smile. "The problem was funding. As our research progressed, development costs skyrocketed. We simply didn't have the capital to sustain it. So eventually, you ran out of money." "Exactly." That's when Shawn told me he had connections with an executive at a major corporation. He believed that securing funding from them would ease our financial struggles. And I was against it. Relying on a big corporation meant losing control over our own technology. But Shawn went ahead and negotiated behind my back. Ms. Hartley's breath hitched slightly. "I wanted to complete this technology with my own hands. But Shawn had a different priority. He put financial survival first and handed everything over to that executive without my consent." "He ignored your opinion?" "Yeah." "Our company was absorbed, and we lost all rights to our own research." I paused for a moment, then continued. "But I realized something back then. The technology itself wasn't lost. Someone, somewhere, was continuing its development." "So you started investigating?" I nodded quietly. "Yes. And eventually, I discovered that my technology was still being researched right here, at this branch." Ms. Hartley stared at me in disbelief. "Then the reason you joined this company was—" "Yes. I joined to follow this technology, to see where it had ended up." "You went that far?" "This technology is my dream. I couldn't just let it go." I tightened my expression slightly. But I realized that working at the headquarters was meaningless. The real work, the heart of the project, was happening here. "At this branch?" "Yes. That's why I requested the transfer myself." Ms. Hartley's eyes widened in realization. "I told my superiors that I wanted hands-on experience in the field, but in reality, that was just an excuse. My true goal was to get transferred to this branch." "Are you saying you deliberately let yourself be demoted?" "That's right. I needed to be here to see this technology with my own eyes." Ms. Hartley remained silent for a moment, absorbing my words. Then, she finally spoke, her voice calm yet firm. "You've truly dedicated your life to this technology." "Yes. This isn't just a job to me." She let out a deep breath and met my gaze. "You've been carrying this burden alone all this time, haven't you?" I gave a small nod. "But you're not alone anymore." "What?" "From now on, let's complete this technology together. Let's make this dream a reality together." Her words made my eyes widen in surprise. "Ms. Hartley." She gave me a quiet smile. "This technology doesn't belong to just you. It's something we'll build together as a team." Her expression was resolute, unwavering. Her words resonated deep within me. From that day on, I fully immersed myself in the development efforts alongside the branch's engineers. At first, the team was wary of me. But gradually, things began to change. The head of the engineering department started accepting my proposals, leading to increased success rates in our experiments. The sales team, seeing progress, grew more motivated and enthusiastic. Before long, I had become a key figure in the branch. This is where I belong. Coming here was the right choice. The development team was steadily bringing the technology closer to completion. Ms. Hartley also began relying on me more, seeking my input on critical decisions. "Nate, I'm counting on you for the next phase as well." "Of course. Leave it to me." The branch's atmosphere was slowly transforming, lightening up, smiles were returning to the employees' faces. This place was becoming invaluable to me. Just when things seemed to be progressing smoothly, an unexpected issue arose. The material costs are exceeding our projections. In the conference room, Ms. Hartley spread out the documents before us, her expression troubled. "With every prototype we produce, the amount of raw materials we need increases. And to make matters worse, procurement costs have recently gone up as well." I reviewed the reports and nodded gravely. "This is going to push us over budget. I don't want to slow down development, but at this rate, we'll exceed our financial limits." I fell into deep thought. Given our branch's current situation, securing additional funds independently would be difficult. Ms. Hartley let out a sigh. "I reached out to headquarters for additional funding, but they said they can't allocate anything immediately." "Then what's our next move?" "They told me to consult with a person in charge in the finance department. Apparently, they'll handle the funding and procurement adjustments from their end." "A person in charge in the finance department?" "Yes. Since headquarters will be overseeing the arrangements, I need you to go and meet with them in person." Something about this didn't sit right with me, but at the moment, we had no other options. The next day, I headed to the finance department at headquarters. Ms. Hartley had arranged an appointment in advance, so I was quickly led to a meeting room. Now that I think about it, they never told me who I'd be meeting. The conference room door opened, and I stepped inside. Sitting there was Shawn. "Shawn?" Shawn's eyes widened in surprise when he saw me. "I never expected you to show up." After a brief silence, he stood up from his chair with a wry smile. "It's been a while, Nate." I stood there, speechless, staring at Shawn. Finding out that the finance representative from the headquarters was Shawn sent a small wave of unease through me. "Surprised?" "Well, I can't blame you. You're the one handling finance?" Shawn shrugged and gave a sarcastic smirk. "That's right. After the acquisition, the higher-ups at headquarters set up a position for me. Now, I'm in charge of finances." "You've moved up in the world. You've changed a lot too. Back then, you were just some tech geek. Now, you're even working as an interpreter." I ignored his remark and got straight to the point. "I'm here to discuss material procurement. We need your cooperation to keep the branch project running." Shawn fell silent for a moment, then let out a light chuckle. "Relax, Nate. I have no intention of getting in your way. Can I really believe that? Shawn leaned on the table, locking eyes with me. There's no benefit in sabotaging you, is there? As someone from headquarters, my job is to maximize the company's profits. I wouldn't do anything to betray you. I wasn't sure how much of that I could trust, but right now, we needed both funding and materials. Besides, if I pull some strings, material procurement will go much more smoothly. I'll help with your project. Material procurement? That's right. If I make the calls, negotiations with suppliers will move faster. That works out well for you, doesn't it? Shawn kept his gaze on me, a smile still on his face. There was something unsettling about that smile, but I had no reason to refuse his help. All right. I'll count on you. Good answer. This is just business, after all. With Shawn's involvement, material procurement indeed became more efficient. However, a lingering sense of unease remained in my chest. Since Shawn started handling procurement, the materials had been arriving smoothly. But development had clearly slowed down. Something's not right. We have all the materials we need, so why is progress stalling? The development team was sluggish, and morale at the site was noticeably low. Work was getting delayed, and more time was being wasted. Ms. Hartley seemed to have noticed the issue as well. In the conference room, she furrowed her brows while looking over the labor cost report. Labor costs are going up. The project is behind schedule, yet expenses keep increasing. Something's clearly wrong. Ms. Hartley closed the report and let out a troubled sigh. Headquarters has been reaching out too. They're questioning whether the branch is being managed properly. I hesitated for a moment but then made up my mind and spoke. Ms. Hartley, I think the finance department. Shawn might be involved. Ms. Hartley's eyes widened in surprise. Shawn? Yes. Material procurement has gone smoothly, but development has slowed down. The timing is just too convenient. Ms. Hartley narrowed her eyes, deep in thought. I don't think we should trust Shawn. But the words she spoke next caught me completely off guard. But Shawn said, I know they're doing their best. What? Ms. Hartley lowered her gaze slightly and continued in a quiet voice. He also said he would speak to the higher-ups. He's going to explain the situation at the branch to headquarters and try to secure additional support. I was at a loss for words. Shawn said that? Ms. Hartley gave a small nod. He's trying to help the branch too. Something about her words didn't sit right with me, but she continued. Nate, are your personal feelings clouding your judgment? No. I wanted to deny it, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that my distrust of Shawn was affecting my ability to think objectively. I couldn't help but wonder. Even after that, the project delays continued. The development team grew more exhausted, and morale steadily declined. Something was definitely wrong. I could feel it, but I still couldn't pinpoint the exact cause. Then, one day, Shawn visited the branch. After spending a long time in a meeting with Ms. Hartley, I saw the two of them walking out together. I approached them and spoke up. Shawn, what were you talking about? Shawn gave a small shrug and smirked in that usual, sarcastic way of his. We were discussing material procurement. And a bit about site management too. Ms. Hartley cast her eyes downward, looking somewhat apologetic. Shawn continued. Ms. Hartley, isn't the real problem Nate? For a moment, I was speechless. You're saying it's my fault? Shawn nodded without hesitation, completely unfazed. I'm not blaming you. But the site management seems to be falling apart. The workers are disorganized, and progress is slow. Isn't that the manager's responsibility? I was about to argue back, but Shawn kept talking. Maybe the person in charge of the site just isn't the right fit. That one sentence hit me like a knife to the chest. Ms. Hartley looked at me, her face filled with uncertainty. Nate, is there anything you can think of? I've been keeping track of the site and managing things accordingly. I don't see any issues. Shawn spoke again, his tone deceptively kind. But in reality, the project is behind schedule, isn't it? That's a fact. Ms. Hartley's expression wavered, and she fell into deep thought. A few days later, a development meeting was held at the branch. As the team gathered to discuss future plans, Ms. Hartley suddenly spoke up in a calm voice. Nate. Yes? She hesitated for a brief moment but then seemed to steel herself before continuing. You're being removed from this project. The air in the conference room froze instantly. Why? Ms. Hartley's face was pained as she slowly began to explain. With all the ongoing disarray at the site, we need to reassess the management structure from a different perspective. We can't afford any more delays. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm being removed from the project? Ms. Hartley avoided my gaze and gave a quiet nod. It's a necessary decision to restore order on site. But I've been more dedicated to this project than anyone. There was hesitation in Ms. Hartley's expression, but she said nothing more and proceeded to conclude the meeting. After the meeting ended, I returned to my desk, lost in thought. A deep frustration welled up inside me. This project is my dream, and now I'm being removed from it? I clenched my fist on the desk, tightening my grip. But I can't let it end like this. I need to find out what Shawn is up to. I made up my mind I was going to uncover Shawn's schemes. To protect the branch and the project, I had to expose his wrongdoing. From the day I was removed from the project, I sat at my desk, deep in thought. The frustration burned in my chest, but I couldn't let it consume me. I had to find a way to expose Shawn. As I was thinking of my next move, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. It was Seth, a department head from headquarters. Hello, this is Nate. Nate? Do you have a moment? His voice carried a sense of urgency. Yes, I'm free. What's going on? After a brief silence, Seth spoke in a low voice. There's something you need to know. What is it? It's about your old friend, Shawn. I instinctively leaned forward. Shawn has been making deals with the supplier behind the scenes. He's manipulating procurement prices and siphoning off money. What? My heart pounded at Seth's words. And that's not all. He's been bribing some of the project members to deliberately sabotage your reputation. He's bribing the team members. The chaos on site isn't your fault. Shawn orchestrated it. I clenched my fists tightly. Seth's words struck deep. Seth, thank you for telling me. I believe in you. If anything happens, reach out to me immediately. I will. After hanging up, I exhaled deeply. Shawn. So you really were behind all of this. Determined to uncover his schemes, I started moving carefully within the branch. If I made any reckless moves, Shawn would catch on. So, I pretended to be cleaning while discreetly checking server logs, warehouse records, and listening to employee conversations. I gathered contracts from suppliers linked to Shawn and reviewed project progress reports. Slowly but surely, the evidence piled up. A few days later, I had everything I needed. With the documents in hand, I steeled myself and went to see Ms. Hartley. When she saw me enter the conference room, a look of surprise crossed her face. Nate? Ms. Hartley, may I have a moment of your time? She nodded and gestured for me to step inside. What is this about? I spread out the documents I had brought and began explaining, showing them one by one. These are the contracts for the suppliers Shawn has been dealing with. And these are the irregular transaction records with those suppliers. When cross-referenced, it's clear that Shawn has been manipulating procurement prices. Ms. Hartley's expression grew increasingly severe. I can't believe this. Furthermore, I have proof that some project members received money from Shawn. These individuals have been deliberately stirring up chaos on site. Ms. Hartley fell silent for a moment, then let out a deep sigh and finally spoke. "Nate, I'm truly sorry." "What?" She lowered her head. "I doubted you. But you've been working tirelessly for the branch and the project all along. I just want to see this technology completed." "That's my dream." Ms. Hartley closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "Shawn hasn't changed at all since the day he betrayed you. More importantly, Ms. Hartley, for now, we have to make sure he doesn't realize what we're planning." "What do you mean?" "We have all the evidence. At the next headquarters presentation, we'll expose Shawn's crimes." Her eyes widened in shock. "At the presentation?" "Yes. It's the perfect stage where all the executives will be gathered. That's where we'll reveal everything." After a brief silence, Ms. Hartley gave a firm nod. "Understood. I'll cooperate." With that, our plan to take down Shawn was officially in motion. The day of the headquarters presentation arrived. The atmosphere in the executive meeting room was heavy. Around the large, oval conference table, the top executives of the company took their seats, filling the room with tension. And among them, one person stood out the most. Shawn. As always, he adjusted the collar of his suit and wore a smug, confident smile. Well, Nate. Fancy seeing you here." I ignored him and quietly focused on preparing my materials. Today, in this very room, I was going to expose him. The meeting began, and it was time for the branch's status report. Ms. Hartley stood and gave a concise explanation of the branch's progress and challenges. And now, Nate Cansby will provide a detailed report on the project's status. I rose from my seat and projected my slides onto the screen. The first slide displayed an overview of the project and its progress. The next slide was supposed to reveal Shawn's fraudulent activities. "Now, if you would take a look at this." But the screen was blank. "What?" Panic surged through me. All the prepared files were gone. "What's happening?" I quickly checked my laptop, but there was no trace of the evidence. Not even a single remnant of the data remained. Then, behind me, I heard a low chuckle. "What's wrong, Nate?" "Something amiss?" I instinctively turned around. Shawn looked at us with a wry smile. He stood up as if he had been waiting for this moment. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I may have just a moment of your time?" The executives exchanged glances before nodding, shifting their focus to Shawn. "There is one concern I have regarding this project." Shawn began, his voice calm, but his eyes burned with unmistakable hostility. "I've received reports that site management at the branch has been severely lacking, causing major delays in development. After investigating the cause, I have come to one conclusion." I held my breath and stared at Shawn. "The issue is you, Nate. Your incompetence as a manager." The tension in the room spiked instantly. Every executive's gaze locked onto me. It is clear that he is unfit to lead this project. The site is in disarray, and the employees are exhausted. I strongly recommend that he be removed from this project. My fists clenched tightly. "Shawn, you're really going this far?" Shawn confidently scanned the room, ensuring he had the executive's attention before finally turning his gaze back to me. "Nate, I'm looking forward to hearing your rebuttal." His cold smile spread across my vision, freezing the air in the conference room. I searched for words, but frustration and urgency clouded my thoughts. Then, breaking the silence, someone stood up. "Excuse me." All eyes turned toward Ms. Hartley. She slowly stepped forward, positioning herself at the center of the room. "There have been concerns raised about Nate's management abilities." She paused briefly, then reached into the inner pocket of her suit and pulled out a small USB drive. "But before we jump to conclusions, I'd like you all to see this." Shawn's confident expression faltered for the first time. "What is that?" Ms. Hartley switched the slide and inserted the USB into the computer. In the next instant, evidence of Shawn's fraudulent activities flashed onto the conference room monitor. Irregular procurement records, financial transactions showing the misappropriation of funds, and statements from bribed project members. One after another, the proof of Shawn's wrongdoing was laid bare. Shawn, you have been colluding with suppliers to artificially inflate material costs. Additionally, you bribed project members to sabotage the branch's development. That's impossible. Shawn's face turned pale as he desperately tried to argue. This data is fabricated. There's no way this evidence can be trusted. Ms. Hartley remained firm, cutting off his weak defense. It's not fabricated. This information has already been verified by Headquarters' Financial Audit Department. The room erupted into murmurs. Shawn, is this true? You'd better start explaining yourself. Shawn's eyes darted around, scrambling to come up with an excuse, but there was nowhere left to run. Sweat beaded on his forehead, his lips trembling. He made one last desperate attempt. No, I was just. But under the cold stares of the executives, he fell silent. Shawn, if this is true, you will have to take responsibility for your actions. Fraud of this magnitude damages the company's credibility. Severe disciplinary action will be necessary. And so, Shawn's crimes were fully exposed before the executive board. He lost all trust from headquarters, and after further investigation, a decision was made to terminate him. The project members who had colluded with him were also dealt with accordingly. With his head hanging low, Shawn walked out of the conference room. As I watched him go, I let out a quiet breath. It's finally over. After Shawn left, silence filled the conference room. Then, Ms. Hartley stood up once more, scanning the faces of the executives. Nate's contributions deserve proper recognition. Her strong words instantly shifted the atmosphere in the room. This technological development is something he has pursued relentlessly, never giving up. He worked harder than anyone else on site. Not just for the future of this branch, but for the employees who dedicate themselves to this project. The executives nodded silently in agreement. We cannot afford to lose someone like him. The future of this company depends on people like Nate. Those who have dreams and the determination to pursue them. Her words struck deep in my heart. After the meeting, I was reinstated as project leader. Development resumed smoothly, and at last, our new material technology was completed. The innovation made a significant impact on environmental issues and gained worldwide recognition. The company's revenue skyrocketed, generating massive profits. Headquarters even offered me a position among the upper management. But I told Ms. Hartley, I want to keep working at the branch. Why? Because I want to continue creating new technology with you. Hearing that, Ms. Hartley smiled softly. Years later, the branch had grown into the company's central development hub. And as for me and Ms. Hartley, or rather, Melissa, we were now husband and wife. One peaceful morning on our day off, we walked side by side, gazing up at the sky. We've been through a lot, haven't we? We have. But I made it through because you were with me. Our hands naturally intertwined. Let's keep chasing our dreams together. Yeah. No matter what challenges lay ahead, we would continue walking forward toward the future we dreamed of.